doses by March. We have secured 9 million vaccine doses from Johnson & Johnson, commencing with delivery in the second quarter. Johnson & Johnson has contracted Aspen, one of our pharmaceutical companies here in South Africa, to manufacture their vaccines at their manufacturing plant in Nelson Mandela Bay. In addition, Pfizer has committed 20 million vaccine doses, commencing with deliveries in the second quarter. We are in advanced negotiations with manufacturers to secure additional supplies. South Africa will also receive an allocation of vaccine doses through the African Union, which has been negotiating with manufacturers to secure vaccines for the entire continent on a pooled basis. Through the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team of the African Union, which is led by Mr. Strive Masiyiwa from Zimbabwe, on which our Health Minister, Dr. Zwelini Mkhize, also sits, we have to date secured 1 billion vaccines for the entire continent. 700 million of these will come through the Global COVAX facility, and 300 million have been facilitated by the African Vaccine Acquisition Task Team. We will be getting other vaccines that will be donated by various private sector companies to add to the vaccines that our continent needs. MTN, which is one of our companies that operates across a number of countries on the African continent, has made a donation of $25 million to procure 7 million vaccines, which will be made available to countries on the African continent within a matter of weeks. And it is from these that our immediate neighbors, who we are also concerned about, like Lesotho, Eswatini, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Namibia, who are immediately around us, and to those countries many of our people travel to, and their people also come here. They will also benefit fairly soon from this facility, or from this donation. I would like to applaud MTN for this generous donation, and I call upon private sector companies to follow the example that has been set by MTN. A considerable amount of work has been done with the private sector, and I'm pleased that there is strong commitment to support every aspect of the national vaccine rollout effort. This includes funding when needed, logistics, distribution, and administration. This has manifested in tight collaboration between the public and the private sector through a range of work streams, meetings that have been meeting on a daily basis to achieve a successful rollout. We aim to secure enough doses to achieve herd immunity, also known as population immunity, which I prefer. This is when enough of the population is immune to the virus to provide indirect protection to those who are not immune. This should bring the spread of the virus under control. Our scientists estimate that we will likely reach herd immunity once around 67% of our people are immune. This amounts, in our case, to around 40 million people in South Africa. We will leave no stone unturned in our efforts to make sure that enough vaccine doses are secured to reach population immunity in our country. The vaccines that we are procuring have gone through meticulous multi-stage testing processes, including large trials involving thousands of people. In addition to determining their effectiveness, these trials are also designed to identify side effects and safety concerns. Independent regulators then review the data from these trials to ensure that they are not harmful. The vaccines that we are procuring have been shown to be safe in large clinical trials across multiple countries. We all want to be free of this disease. We all want to be safe, and for those we love to also be safe. We aim to make the vaccine available to all adults living in South Africa, regardless of their citizenship or resident status. We will be putting in place measures to deal with the challenge of undocumented migrants in our country so that, as with all other people, we can properly record and track their vaccination history. It is in the best interests of all that as many of us receive the vaccine as possible. But I want to be clear, nobody will be forced to take this vaccine. I want to repeat, nobody will be forced to take this vaccine. Nobody will be forbidden from traveling to wherever they want to travel to, including from enrolling at school or from taking part in any public activity if they have not been vaccinated. Nobody will be given this vaccine against their will, nor will the vaccine be administered in secret or in some dark corners. Any rumors to this effect are both false and dangerous, and we would like those who are spreading these rumors to stop. Fellow South Africans, the first set of good news is the arrival of the vaccine today. The second is that we have recorded our lowest daily increase in infections since the beginning of December of last year. In fact, the average rate of new infections has been steadily coming down over the last 3 weeks, indicating that we have now passed the peak of the second wave. In the past 7 days, the daily average of new infections was around 5,500, compared to just over 10,000 infections in the previous 7 days. In other words, the average number of daily new infection has come down to almost half of what it was. The number of hospital admissions has also been falling. At the peak of the second wave, we recorded over 2,300 hospital admissions in a day. This has now fallen to 295 hospital admissions by the 29th of January. While all the indicators are heading in the right direction, we are still experiencing relatively high rates of transmission. We are pleased that across the country, most people are adhering to the restrictions we have had to impose and are diligently observing the basic health measures needed to prevent infection. I want to thank the millions of South Africans who had to endure restrictions on their movement and activities so that infections could be contained and lives could be saved. You have understood that no walk on the beach, no picnic in the park, and no late party is worth the loss of life that has been prevented by these restrictions. While these restrictions are temporary, the loss of life is permanent. Nevertheless, we know that the measures necessary to contain the spread of the virus have caused great hardship and difficulty for some people. We are acutely aware that these restrictions have negatively affected businesses and threatened jobs in the hospitality, the tourism, and related industries. That is why we are determined that such restrictions should not continue any longer than is absolutely necessary to contain the pandemic, as well as to minimize the loss of life. It is for this reason that we will continue to work with business and labor in these sectors to revive businesses, to restore jobs both in the immediate and long term. Over the last few days, we have assessed the state of the pandemic. We have sought the advice of our experts and consulted with representatives of the provincial, local governments, as well as our traditional leaders. With a clear decline in new infections, hospital admissions, and deaths, Cabinet has decided to steadily ease a number of restrictions under adjusted level 3. The first, the hours of the curfew will now be from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. Establishments where people go for either entertainment or otherwise will need to close by 10 p.m. so as to allow their customers and staff to return home by curfew time commencing. The second, faith-based gatherings will now be permitted, subject to health protocols. Such gatherings may not exceed 50 people for indoor venues and 100 people for outdoor venues. Where the venue is too small to accommodate these numbers within appropriate social distancing, then no more than 50% of the capacity of the venue may be used. Thirdly, public places such as beaches, dams, rivers, parks, and public swimming pools will be reopened subject to health protocols. Restrictions on the sale of alcohol will be eased. The sale of alcohol by licensed premises for off-site consumption will be permitted from Mondays to Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Duty-free shops